Hi there, welcome back to my channel. Today I am sharing with you our notebook system, how I keep record of my daughter's oral narrations. She also does drawn narration. So I'm just sharing with you the notebooks that we use each day in our lessons. I feel like it's helpful to see what other families do when they're actually doing their lessons day to day. How do you keep record of your oral narrations, or do you keep record at all? And how many notebooks do you have? What subjects do you have notebooks for? It's just kind of an overwhelming thing that no one really talks about in the Charlotte Mason world, except for one person, and that's Lori Bestvader. And she wrote the book, The Living Page, and it's Keeping Notebooks with Charlotte Mason. And I read this at the beginning of my daughter's first year of school, so this was about a year ago. And I really enjoyed this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have gained so much knowledge from it. As you can see, I have marked it up like crazy because all of the things I do are really recorded on notebooks, and everything I learned about notebooking is in here. So I highly recommend you check this out. I'm going to put a link to it in the description. So really quick, what is notebooking? It's basically recording what your child learns through their lessons each day. So if you read about American history, you would have your child, either tell you what they read, and then I would record for them, or you could have them draw in their notebook too. And I'm gonna just open these up and show you what's inside each one. Yeah, so let's get started. When I first realized that I wanted to start using notebooks in our homeschool, I was really overwhelmed. And I think it's just because you hear all these buzzwords of a Charlotte Mason education. So the Book of Centuries and the timeline and the narration notebook and all these things, the nature study journal. You hear about all of it, but you don't really understand how you organize it, or what notebooks do you need now and which ones do you need later on. And so everything that I have right now is very simplified, and eventually, yeah, I'd like to have a notebook for every subject, but I don't want to fatigue my daughter by having her notebook after every single reading. So I decided to just take the ones that I felt like were really important and make notebooks of those. And so I'm just going to begin with our very first notebook, which is our Bible notebook. This notebook is from Anna Vance Paper Co. I have a few of them, and you can customize them, which is nice. This one has my daughter's name on it. So I have a few from Anna Vance, and then I have a few from Riverbend. And this one's from Riverbend, and this one's from Riverbend. But I'll kind of explain what they are. So the Bible one, I just leave it blank. And this was her first ever narration. And this one, I just kind of left, I just let her tell me what she heard, and then I wrote down what she said. So she said, this is her first narration, "I remember the king was telling them to save the children." That's it. And I wrote the date. And then, fast forward to this year, here's her drawing. And this is Moses and the Israelites building the tabernacle that the Lord asked them to build. That's onyx, linen, and gold. She told me that, and I labeled it for her. So I love that you can do oral narration and just record what your child says to you, or you can do a drawn narration in the notebook. And so after our Bible lesson, I would read, and then we would notebook that day or the next day. It just depends on how much time we have in our lessons, which are typically only 20 minutes long. So that's our Bible notebook, and that's just for the subject of Bible, and we only record our Old Testament and New Testament lessons in there. And then this is our narration notebook. So I don't have a separate one for natural history. I don't have a separate one I have nature study, separate one, but not natural history. I don't have a separate notebook for American history. I don't have a separate notebook for a lot of things. And that is because I don't want to overwhelm her. So this is an example of a narration from recently. This was, I think, last week. This is the dragonfly that she drew, and then I recorded what she told me about her lesson that we read. So this is her giant narration. And I recorded every single word for word, like literally as she's saying it, I'm writing it. This is what I do. My hand cramps. It's fine. But yes, so this is the, let's see, yes, narration notebook. Any narration for a lesson. Sometimes it's literature. Sometimes it's natural history. Sometimes it's, yeah, it just depends. This is a cute one. And I'll show you guys the inside of these too. But yeah, this notebook just is allows for us to keep, like, this will be her like main narration notebook. So we have so far just Bible and narration. Next one is our geography notebook. The geography notebook is just for our geography lessons. And the reason I kept this is because, and I did do one for this subject, is because I feel like geography is something that you really have to kind of write out and see visually. And so I wanted to be able to have a separate one for that. Like I said, history, natural history, literature, all those different little narrations we keep in a separate notebook, but we have a single geography notebook. So that's 3 so far. There's only 3 more left. So there's a total of 6 notebooks for one kid. If I had multiple kids doing formal lessons, I would have one of these for each of them. So I'd have a total of 12 notebooks for 2 kids versus 6 just for the one, if that makes sense. Okay, the next notebook we have is actually a recommendation we got from the CMEC, and it was to have my daughter paint her narration or draw what she learned after each Burgess book reading. And so we're going to do this for the Burgess Book of Birds, which is what we read right now for once a week for our natural history lesson. So that's 1 notebook entry a week. And that's the same for all of these others. It's like about 1 a week for each subject. But yeah, so here is her oral narration. And then this is her painting. And so we have one, there's 23 total, and we have one for every single bird we've read about so far. And at the end, it'll be a beautiful little record of the birds that she's learned about this year. And next year, when we read the Burgess Book of Flowers or the Burgess Book of Animals, I can't remember which one is next. Yeah, next year when we read the Burgess Book of Animals, the animal we learn about for that chapter, she'll have a little book just like this, but it'll be for the animals. So this is just going to be for Burgess bird record, so that's why there's a bird on it. But yeah, so this is a fun little project for her. It's fun for me to see the progress, and it's also a way to record our narrations after each lesson. Okay, 2 more. So this is the Truth, Beauty, Goodness notebook, and since we follow a Charlotte Mason education, we are all about Truth, Beauty, Goodness. This is where we record her composer's study, her artist or picture study, and her any recitations or poems that she's learning, things that are important to her. And we actually won't keep this yearly. This is a notebook, this single notebook here. It's a hardcover, and it was a little pricey, but we will use this for about 3 to 4 years. So she'll record her composer study, her artist or picture study notes and notebook entries, and then any poems that she's learning for recitation, any hymns she's learning for recitation. This will all be recorded in this notebook, and there's beautiful little ribbons here that, you know, bookmarks that divide each little area. So it's a very beautiful resource and way to kind of record the beautiful things she's learning, the truth, beauty, and goodness she's learning in her homeschool. So I know you're overwhelmed, but honestly, this is just our little stack. It's not too bad. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have the nature journal. So the nature journal has anything, and this is hers, so she does not have me say what I want her to draw in it. She can draw whatever she likes, but it has to be related to her nature study. So if we go on a walk or a hike, she'll paint in here any way that she wants, any form, what she would like to record, and we always have her try to record the date and the location and maybe the weather if we can get her to write it out. So a lot of times her writing is still very, you know, first grade-ish, but that's okay. This is hers, and I'm not going to write in it or bother her about it, because I want her to get into the habit of journaling when she sees things. So I want her to really keep this for herself. I'm not gonna hone on spelling with this, nothing. And a lot of this stuff is talked about in that book I mentioned at the beginning, The Living Page. But you definitely want the nature study notebook to be a sacred notebook that's a personal record that they keep. You do not spell things for them in this. We have a monthly nature study group, and sometimes I'll see the moms they'll say, okay, here's flower, Flower, and I'm just like, no, like, do that in your lessons. Let them have their nature study journal. So this is a very sweet personal notebook for her. And then at the back of it, though, I do have her keep a list of birds she's seen. This is some of the birds we've seen this year. And then ideally, Charlotte Mason would have her students record the Latin name and the location they saw it and the date as well. And that brings me to my last little bonus notebook, and that is our Calendar of Firsts notebook. And this is a family notebook, so I actually do a lot of the recording, and typically in the first years, Mother does do this. She'll record, but I'll have the month, and I'll just say, okay, April, you know, we saw, let's see, wild turkeys. We spotted wild turkeys in the wild, or we saw a larkspur flower, wild larkspur, or we saw some tree swallows, and I would put the date and the location, and that's it. You're just recording the things you saw for the first time that year, and then the next year you can kind of look and hunt for them as they occur, and you'll know about when to expect them. So it's a pretty fun little family activity. And yeah, I think we also have a backyard bird notebook, but it stays downstairs next to our bird feeder, like in the window, where we can, you know, quickly write down the birds that we spotted at our bird feeder. I would count that as our one of our personal family notebooks. So I know a lot of you are going to ask me, where's your Book of Centuries? Okay, so Charlotte Mason did not start with the Book of Centuries right away when your kids were in Form 1. I know how excited you are about it. What I would suggest, though, is that you, as mom, keeps a Book of Centuries as you're teaching in your first grader, second grader, third grader, because it's actually a really useful tool. And in the Living Page, Laurie does mention that you can start with a timeline that'll kind of teach your child how to keep a Book of Centuries. But keeping a Book of Centuries is actually something that I think Form 4 students do. It's not really something that Form 1 students need to worry about. And that's the same thing for a lot of the notebooks that you'll see. A commonplace book is not necessary for your Form 1 child, so don't stress about figuring out how to keep that. But again, what I would suggest is having mom keep one, and I'm going to share with you a video in just a few weeks on my personal notebooks. I actually have quite a few notebooks. I have a gardening journal, a commonplace book, I have a book where I record all the things I'm learning, I have a Bible narration journal, I have my own TBG notebook. Like, I have all the things. So I'll share a video where I, kind of share all of my notebooks that I keep. But your children seeing you keep notebooks, I have my own nature study journal, like them seeing you paint your nature study journal, that is going to solidify, like, this is what women or moms or adults do. They learn, they're interested in growing themselves, they're interested in notebooking and recording and learning new things about the world, and they're going to be much more into the notebooking if their mom or their dad or whomever they live with is doing it too. And so I would encourage you today as the mother teacher to kind of step up and start keeping your own notebooks. And yeah, I'll share a video with what I would suggest for mom to start later on, but hopefully this was helpful for you. I showed you a little bit of how we use notebooks in our homeschool. If you're curious about narration, that is really the hallmark of a Charlotte Mason education, and narration is impossible. I'm sorry, notebooking is impossible without narration. So I have a video on narration, and I'm going to link it in the description. And I would love for you guys to join my Living in Color community. We talk a lot about homeschooling. We talk a lot about the behind the scenes of homeschooling and household management and homemaking and all those wonderful things. So I'd love for you to join us over there. I'm going to leave a link to that in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.